Well, for those of you who have been with us all week, I apologize if I give a little bit of a brief summary of where we've come from, because I discover all the time that there are people who just kind of happen upon us or are given a link and they jump in, and I kind of give them a chance to join with us and not try to figure out where we're going. We've been looking at the first 5 verses in 2 Timothy chapter 3, where Paul talks about the psychological pathology of people in the end times, what people are going to be like. And it's not a very flattering portrait. Paul, who makes lots of lists in his letters, this is his longest list, some 20 different things that he said people will be like. And let me put it this way, these are not people that you want in your life. And sometimes as Christians, we think we have to let everyone and anyone into our life. And that's not what Scripture teaches. And we'll probably deal with that in more detail when we get to the end of this list, where he says to avoid these people, just the opposite of letting them into your life. But we're looking at the fourth of these characteristics. The first one, he said that they would be lovers themselves. Secondly, they'd be lovers of money. Thirdly, they'd be boastful. And you can catch up on that if you go back to yesterday's broadcast. But today we're going to look at the fourth thing he says that are characteristic of these people is they're proud. And that's kind of a broad categorization, simply because we all understand that pride is a part of human personality. It was the original sin. Sin started before the creation when Lucifer, Satan, became proud. He said, I will become like God. No greater expression of pride has ever been seen. It's been repeated a lot, but that was really the beginning of it. And so we understand that there's a lot of pride in ourselves, or at least I would say that if you don't see the pride in you, you're not being completely honest with yourself, because we all have this thing and stuff that gets offended. And offenses and resentment are often the most clear expression of being proud. It's kind of that mindset of, how can anybody do that to me? How can they treat me that way? And we're not saying it out of a broken heart as much as we're saying it out of the idea that we inherently deserve better. And I think it's something that you really need to work through, because if you don't deal with pride, if you don't learn how to embrace humiliating experiences and humility in your life, you're going to find yourself at odds with God and also being a very unhappy person. It's interesting that James put it very simply. He said, God resists the proud and he exalts the humble. So if you want to be exalted, if you want to be in a high place with God, you do it by going as low as you can, letting God humble you, letting him do in you what he needs to do. And that's where I think sometimes we have to realize that there's no task that's too great for us. I mean, it was important, I think, in my own life to suddenly realize that there's nothing that needs doing that is below me. I pick up cigarette butts that people leave on the sidewalks of our church. I mean, I pick up trash that's left there. I've even picked up dog droppings that people have allowed to be deposited on our lawns, just because if I see it and I realize if I don't do it, somebody else is going to have to do it, and I don't want it to look crummy. So there's just nothing that's, that we should ever think that we're too good for, because we're not. There are some things that physically I can't do, and that's really humbling, and I have to depend upon others. But there are other things that if I can do them, there's nothing too important. What that means, guys, is that we can help our wives out around the house a lot by doing the things that they do, that cleaning the dishes, helping them clean the house, helping them just handle certain tasks that are everyday and mundane. It's not above you. And sometimes God will put you in a situation where that's the right thing to do. I remember so many times where, I've had my shoulder rebuilt, I've had my hip rebuilt, I had a foot that was broken. I was in a cast for 6 months. And it was really hard on my wife, One of the staff members asked me when my shoulder was in a sling for 12 weeks and I couldn't use my right arm. She asked me what the hardest part was of not being able to use my right arm. Well, I'm right-handed. And I just looked at her and said, think about it for a moment. I won't go any deeper, but I'm just telling you, it was pretty humbling, pretty bad. So, of course, my wife informed me that all I needed to do is become ambidextrous, so that's how that works. But the bottom line is that there are some things that we think that are below us, and we should never think that. nothing is below us. Well, back to the issue of pride. The pride that he talks about, the word that's used here in the original language really is an ostentatious pride. It's a pretentious display that we put on to impress other people and and attract notice. It's basically doing something to show off. And it's kind of like, that person who's always jumping and photobombing and saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, It comes out sometimes as arrogance. It comes out as a haughtiness. But essentially, it's a contemptuousness of other people. It's a way of showing yourself to be above them. In fact, when I looked at the lexicon for various equivalent words in English, one of them said the following. It says it's overtopping. In other words, it's trying to put yourself over the top of someone else, being conspicuous so that you stand out from everybody else. It's trying to be preeminent with an overweening estimate of your own means, of your own merits, to try to come across like you're wealthier or more capable or more talented or smarter. It really is at the same time a despising of others and even treating them with contempt and being haughty. That what you find with most narcissistic people is they emulate the people that they hate. They're very jealous of people who are capable, and so they'll try to imitate them and become just like them. They may even go so far as to act like them, to dress like them, and even pretending that they are them, because they really hate the person because they have something that they don't have. And that may sound so confusing, but it's simply the confusion of mind that has controlled them. That I would go so far as to say it's the way that the demons of hell have taken control of their thinking and begin to distort their thinking. So they imagine all sorts of good things about themselves and imagine bad things about themselves or about others. And they can become really kind of confusing. That's why I think in the age of Facebook, it always strikes me when I see pictures of celebrities who are in their 80s and 90s and they look like they're in their 30s. My wife said they must have had a lot of surgical work. And I said, not only that, they may have bought stock in Botox, but even beyond that, they're using huge filters. I mean, this is being photoshopped. In fact, I had a fashion model talent agent told me one time that all of the models that we see on the magazine covers are photoshopped. She said none of them look like this. They all have glaring faults, so they go in and they fix them and make them looking better. And I think that as technology is developed, isn't that what's happening with a lot of Facebook posts? Or people who go on dating sites, even Christian dating sites, and people give these Photoshop pictures of themselves. I know of one guy who left his wife for a girl that he met online, and when they did meet, they were disappointed because she said, "You don't look like your picture," and he admitted to her that he had posted his high school picture, not his actual picture. He had 20 years older than that. And then he said, "But you don't look like yours." And she said, "Yeah, I posted my daughter's picture, not my own picture." And they decided that they didn't have the chemistry that they felt they had online. What I'm saying is that this is kind of the kind of world that we're beginning to live in, where if you can fake it, then you can make it. And that's what a proud person does, is they're going around life faking it and pretending that they're better and they have more and they're smarter and they're more talented, more gifted than they actually are, so they can win people over to their side. And so it's really a kind of a horrible type of way of living, because sooner or later they're going to be exposed. And I've often wondered this question. I said, I look at this picture of this person and I know who they are and I know that the picture doesn't look anything like them. And I say, what happens when they actually meet people in real life? I mean, how do you deal with that? Suddenly it's like, oh, you don't look like who you are. I mean, I just wonder to myself, do you really think that that's going to fool people? Sooner or later, you're going to have to appear in real life. Now, I do not see myself as being a photogenic person. And believe me, as you can probably tell, I'm not using any kind of filtration. I'm not having any of this doctored up, because this is who I am. And it's okay. I'm 73, almost 74 years of age, and I don't expect to look any better than what I do. In fact, my son tells me, you look a lot better for your age. And I've had people say that to me, and then I tell them what my real age is, and they said, never mind, I thought you were a lot older. But anyway, this is something I think that we need to understand, is that the word proud as he's using here isn't just taking satisfaction in having done something and looking at it and going, wow, that turned out a lot better than I thought it was going to turn out. It's the kind of idea where you are purposely presenting yourself other than who you really are. One of the things I love about my wife, she will not lie. She's the most honest person in the world I know, and she inherited it from her dad. And, if you don't want to know the truth, don't ask her the question. But I find that it's been really good for me to be married to a person who will just tell it straight to me. And sometimes it doesn't feel good. Sometimes I said, why don't you lie to me for a while so I can feel better? And, sometimes I'll preach a sermon and I say, what did you think? And she said, that wasn't your best. In fact, that was probably one of the worst ones you've ever done. And, I know that already. I'm aware of that. But I just wanted her to lie to me for a little bit so it didn't sting so bad. God knows that we need to be humble, because if we aren't, we'll be so caught up in pride, we won't be worth anything. Anyway, one more this week, and we'll have more next week. See you tomorrow. God bless.